Good evening, my dear viewers, and welcome to the Alliteration gaming video. My name's Levi, and I'm coming at y'all with another Van Life deck profile. Once again, we're covering Star Wars Unlimited, but this time we are covering my absolute new favorite deck in the game post-jump to Lightspeed, and that's going to be Admiral Piett Red, specifically hanging out at the Thermal Oscillator. So, why Piett? Well, before I kind of get into the personal backstory here, let's just go over Piett himself. This guy's really simple. He just says that you can exhaust him and you can play one of those cool capital ships from your hand for one less. He flips on 5 as a nice sturdy little 2/7 with basically the same effect but as a static ability, and they cost 2 less. So Piett, he's not hard to figure out. You want to play a bunch of capital ships, you're going to play him a lot quicker than you should be able to. You're going to ramp, you're going to get those big boys out there, and you're just going to dominate space and then bombard everything on the ground, and it's going to be really, really cool. Now, Piett's not exactly a stranger of a leader. He saw a lot of success once sectors began, specifically with Piett Yellow, actually, because it turns out Triple Dark Raid was not a balanced card and could be comboed with his leader side discount here, which was super crazy. Then Triple Dark Raid got banned, and while Piett didn't completely disappear, we see him a lot less, but when we do see him, we see him in blue because, shocker, when you don't know what to do with your green villain leader, you slap a blue base on there because blue-green villain's a really, really strong core and a really solved shell. And Piett's shell himself already solves a lot for you. The guy tells you to put a bunch of capital ships in your deck. It's not that tough to figure out. However, I am a huge red-green villain enjoyer. Now, when Piett first got revealed, it was, of course, alongside, the Planetary Bombardment, the Red Devastator, and they really kind of sold us on that dream. And I feel like a bunch of people tested that deck and went, wow, this deck just dies. I want to go play blue-green villain and feel very, very comfortable, which is not a bad thing by any means. I'm not a blue-green villain gamer, I'm a red-green villain gamer. I've also liked Piett ever since he got revealed. I just didn't quite have time to brainstorm him together for the Denver sector, but now, post that event, I've been doing a whole lot of testing with him, and I really, really like this guy. I immediately saw the potential for the new red-green villain play big boys deck. Before that was kind of like Bosk 30, and I do think Bosk 30 is still a really good deck. I think I'm leaning a little more towards Piett right now because he can be a bit faster, he can be a little bit more consistent, especially with the Oscillator. We'll talk about that shortly. And at least in the very beginning, post Django ban, it kind of looked like Kazuda was going to be quite good, and that matchup's just unplayable for a boss deck, at least one that really relies on its bounties. Because of Kazuda blanking the bounties and blanking the gained bounties, it's really, really bad news bears. So I set to work out on Piett Red. In the beginning, now I was playing a traditional 30 health base. Right now we have the Thermal Oscillator before us. Let's talk a bit about our base before we get into this deck. This thing is a 27 health base, so we're sacrificing 3 hit points here in order to have a minimum deck size of 45. We get to play 5 less cards in our deck. Why is that really good? This deck has really particular lines it wants to go for, and they all include ramping on turn 2 every single time. And because we aren't Bosk and we can't play Price on Your Head very well, that pretty much restricts us to 6 ramp cards between the Resupply and the Laser Technician. I played a lot of games with 30, I played a lot of games with Oscillator. I found that I was drawing the turn 2 ramp and then the subsequent things that I needed afterwards a lot more. Sometimes I definitely lose games because of those 3 hit points, especially against Sabine and co. But what you sacrifice there, you gain a lot of consistency in a lot of your other matchups. And as much as those 3 less health matters against the aggro decks as well, if it helps you find your specific nail in the coffin answers to stabilize against aggro faster, you find what you need. Sometimes, it's kind of hard to judge that how many games did I win because this helped me see those important pieces faster. I jammed a lot of games with both, and I found that I liked the Oscillator a lot better. Big, big fan of the Thermal Oscillator. That being said, we are going to set Piett and our Oscillator aside over here in order to get into the deck itself. So we are going to start with the ground units like normal. First off, we've got 2 copies of Salacious Crumb. This is the most annoying card in the game, and holy cow, he is so good in our deck. This guy is a 1-cost 1/3. When you drop him down, you get to heal 1 damage from your base. That's not irrelevant at all. Red-green villain has almost no healing, no restore basically. That heals really, really big. And then you can exhaust him and bounce him back to your hand to deal 1 damage to a ground unit. This effect is really, really sweet. It can kind of help finish certain things off. combos really well with a bunch of stuff, and it's just a really reliable unit. Something that's really nice too, when we kind of get into the capital ships, a lot of our early ones are 6 drops, and if we go to 5 resources and we flip Piett and he reduces our 6 drop capital ship to 4, we have 1 resource just kind of hanging out. So if we've played a Crumb at some point, or if we have a Crumb on board that we can bounce and replay, we can kind of always make use of that 1 discount really well, and that kind of just extends throughout the rest of your turns too. If you ever just have 1 resource lying around from that heavy Piett 2 discount, if you're not taking them out, Crumb is really good and is just going to give you a ton of value, especially when he's lined up with his best buddy, Colonel Yularen, a 2-cost 2/3 that says when you play a green unit, heal a damage from your base. Getting Colonel Yularen and Crumb set up together is kind of like a little bit of a mini healing prison, as long as you can, you know, sacrifice taking the initiative each phase, basically. And it's really good. Those, every single hit point matters, even more so when you're playing the 27 health base. It's really strong. I really like Colonel Yularen in this deck. He's kind of the 2-drop that you want most of the time, except sometimes you also really want Admiral Piett. So this is Baby Piett, little 2-drop Piett. This guy is a 2-cost 1/4 that says all of your things that cost 6 or more get ambush. This is obviously insane because all of our stuff is a bunch of big Star Destroyers, big capital ships. Giving some of them ambush is totally nuts, and with how fast this deck goes sometimes, this is honestly what you probably want to open against any aggro deck that you think is going to play a spaceship on you, because getting to ambush in your 6-cost capital ship when you play it on your flip turn, especially if you ramp turn 2, you do this on turn 3, you can clear out their 2, 3, 4-drop spaceship for basically free. And especially if they're a space aggro deck, they probably don't really have a good way to get this guy off the board, save for like a Vader yellow pilot deck playing like Sanctuary Shuttle or something. There's really not a efficient way for those decks to deal with this guy. So he just like sits there and gives you absurd amounts of value across the entire game. It's amazing. Next up, we're playing 3 copies of Super Laser Technician. Of course, we got to play our ramp. When this guy dies, he becomes a ready resource. It's just absolutely amazing. Being able to run this guy into something, get a resource out of it. It's like a resupply, but you got to deal 2 damage somewhere along the way is really good. This guy's a little bit worse than he's been in the past because those all space decks, if you kind of have to play this before they play a ground unit, they can usually skate around this very well. However, Salacious Crumb says return him to your hand and deal 1 damage to any ground unit. So if you play Crumb on turn 1, you can play the Laser Technician on turn 2, and then use Crumb to immediately kill it, and then use that 1 to replay Crumb right there. So that's really good, and it kind of makes Crumb being your like only turn 1 play not so bad if this is what you're gonna drop down on the next turn, and you think that they're gonna be ignoring ground just because that's how their deck works, or because they're trying to avoid Super Laser Technician, or some combination of both. It's one of Red Green Villain's only way to defeat their own Super Laser Technician. Blue has a few different ways you can do it, you know, Kira, Dr. Pershing, but Red, not so much. So we really value that play. And then next up, jumping quite ahead on the curve ground-wise, we're playing 2 Maul. Maul's just a 7/6 with Ambush Overwhelm, and then you can redirect combat damage he takes on attack to an Underworld unit. That's only Crumb in this deck, so we're going to be rarely using that effect, although Crumb does like to hang around a lot, so if you ever get like a real value out of here, it's going to be good. But really, Maul is in here because something that happens quite a lot late in the game against this deck, once you're stabilizing, you're playing your big capital ships in space, you've got it completely down pat over here, but then your opponent just drops like a Poe Dameron or a Wrecker, or just something really bad for you on the ground, and you're like, huh, the only way I can kill this is if I draw like Barrage or, you know, Bombardment or some with a Devastator on board or something like that. And then you just kind of have to claim, and then suddenly you just die. You have total control of the game, and they just drop a ground guy that's massive, and you just die. So Maul kind of found his way back into the deck real late in the game as a bit of an answer for those things. And of course, past that, he's just really strong and really flexible. He's going to be good against basically anything but the mono space decks. And sometimes when you force them to put the leader on the ground, he comes in and punishes that too. We're also, you know, a really ramp heavy deck. Maul comes out on 7, kills basically every 6-cost flip leader on site. And so if you're ramping, you're going to get that on the same turn they're flipping their 6-cost leader. Really nice. I like Maul back in this deck. He makes me feel a bit safer on the ground. And then our last ground unit is a singular Crate Dragon. So Crate Dragon, this is a 9 cost, 10/10 with Overwhelm. And when your opponent plays a card, you get to blast either their base or a ground unit for the cost of what they played. So this guy's just in here for essentially the hard control and or the Kira Data Vault matchups. We're going to talk about Kira Data Vault a lot in this deck profile because it's the hot deck right now. And at least where I am in Austin, it's easily by far the most popular deck. I would say that probably half of my games across like the 3 showdowns that I played with this deck were against Kira Data Vault. And this is kind of where a little bit of the edge of playing red-green villain comes in, is you get a whole lot of direct base damage in those matchups. Crate Dragons, Ruthless Raiders, Red Devastators, Planetary Bombardments, and stuff like that. You can kind of eat those matchups alive if you find, like, you know, the right lines and your opponent isn't acutely aware of all the surprise base damage that you can do. You can literally just burn those decks alive sometimes, even when they have 33 health. So if Kira Data Vault and hard control is rampant, pay attention to a lot of the things that we're going to talk about as we kind of go through this deck profile a bit more. But basically, when you're in those matchups, you kind of really only need one. You know, you can go in the sideboard for more, but you really just kind of realistically want one to close out those games. It's not the end of the world if you don't see it, but it's kind of one of those more like, I don't want to leave home without it. You know, I don't want the possible out to just not be in my deck. So that's why we've got the one Crate Boy in there. Also, I love Crate Dragon. One of my favorite cards in this game. Now, moving on to the space units, we are actually playing 3 Kylo's TIE Silencer. We have no way to activate the effect in this deck, where if it's discarded from your hand or deck, you can play it. It's just a 2 cost 3/2 in space. It's essentially our ideal space opener against a lot of those decks. If you get the initiative against Sabine and you can throw this down and all they have is an A-Wing to play, they will be very sad as you claim and then kill their A-Wing and survive. It's really, really good. This is our only other 2-drop in the deck, so we have essentially 11 turn 1 plays inside of our 45 card deck, which is pretty much above average. It's almost the same as having 12 in a 50 card deck. Speaking of Kira Data Vault or hard control, if they vigilance you and mill this, you do get to play this for free, which is very cool. And that's a very popular thing right now. Also, Force Throw. Holding this against a Force Throw deck feels really cool. They get only 2 damage and you get your card back. It's sweet. Now let's get into what y'all are really here for, and that's the capital ships. First up is just the absolute peak of capital ships when it comes to the red villain, man, Ruthless Raider. 6 cost 4/6. When you play it and when it dies, 2 to an enemy base and then 2 to a ground unit. This card's amazing. One of the best 6-drops in the game. You know what's even cooler? Playing it for 5. This is generally what you want most times, unless you're really trying hard to ramp. Most time a Ruthless Raider is what you want going into the Piett flip turn. It's really good. It can stabilize you against aggro, 2 to something, and then maybe Piett can finish it off on the ground. Or if you have, like, you know, 2-drop Piett out, this getting to ambush is totally insane. You can kill a lot of crazy things when this ambushes, especially if it runs into something. It'll do 8 damage total between the win played, win defeated, and the 4 attack on the ambush. Ruthless Raider is just crazy. And again, you're seeing these 6-drop capital ships when you get to play them for 4 on the Piett turn. That 1 resource on the Salacious Crumb, absolutely beautiful. Love it, love it, love it. Our other 6-drop capital ship, we've got 3 copies of the Resupply Carrier. This thing is awesome, man. It's a 6-drop 4/5, and when you play it, you just get a resource. It's literally Resupply, but on a giant body, and again, we get to play it for 5. Sometimes 4 in this deck. It's crazy strong, and it helps us just ramp even more and even harder into a lot of our big stuff. I specifically really like playing this when I have Maul, because on the 5 resource turn, you can drop this, go to 6. Next turn, you'll resource to 7, and you can immediately start jamming Maul on turn 4, which is really nice. If you ramp to turn 2, of course. Next up is, oh man, favorite card of the deck. Hands down, we have 3 copies of the Red Devastator. This is an 8 cost 9/6. When you play it, you get to deal 4 indirect damage, and you get to assign all indirect damage that you deal. This card is bananas. As an 8 cost unit, this is a pretty reasonable card. It's only got 6 health. That 9 attack is very scary, but it's quite easy to take out. When you're playing this for 6, it's a whole different story. It's a completely different story when you're playing this for 6, or even for 7, it's really good. This card was just absolutely made for Piett. You know, you flip on 5, he's probably going to survive that turn, so you go to the next turn into 6, and then you can play this guy on the 6 resource turn and just start really taking control of the game. And even when you just have Piett on this side, like if he gets taken out really early on, just getting to exhaust and play the Devastator for 7 is amazing. Obviously, since you assign all the indirect damage, a A lot of times when you're playing this against, you know, Kira or hard control, you're just slamming 4 into their base every single time you play this, and basically forcing them to immediately claim because you just can't get hit for 9, man. This thing's massive. This thing comes down and just turns the tides. It's also very good against the aggro decks because once you stabilize against them, this thing just kills them in like 2 turns. Like, it comes down, it burns them for 4, it swings for 9, that's 13. If they're on a 25 hit point base, like, you know, they're pretty close to cooked just right there. I don't know if I could quite call the Red Devastator the win con for this deck, but it's definitely what closes out most of your games and I think really pushes red as a color for Piett. Next up, we're playing 2 copies of Relentless. This is a 9-cost 8/8 that says the first event your opponent plays loses all of its abilities. So another way that we can play against Kira Data Vault and Hard Control really well is by just Sun Run ramping into this. If you go turn 2 ramp, turn 3 deploy Piett, play Resupply Carrier, you could play Relentless on turn 4 if Piett survives because you're on 7 resources. That is actually nuts. If you're a hard control deck with just nothing but a bunch of removal in your hand, and this comes out on turn 4, if you don't have like a confiscate into Fell the Dragon or something, it's going to get bad really, really fast for you. So Relentless is awesome. It's a bit of a win con against those decks. It's also just really good against a lot of like the fair mid-range decks. Dropping this really early can shut down, you know, some U-Wing plays. It shuts down like a lot of the pumps and some of the aggressive decks, which is not irrelevant. Cunning decks kind of don't know what to do as you slam this and then they go, I literally just can't bounce that. A mono cunning deck with Cantina Bouncer is about it. And so the Relentless is a really crazy strong card, and when you're in those control mirrors, the fact that you get to your Relentless way before they do, and really importantly, way before they get to their Super Laser Blast is extremely, extremely relevant. That was always kind of the issue before we're trying to play Relentless in this like red-green villain versus blue-green villain matchup, is they get Super Laser Blast you, and then you're having to hold the Relentless for a while because you can't just play it into an empty board and then get like Avenger or Power of the Darkseid or something. You can't do that with this card, so you have to be really, really careful. Salacious Crumb also really helps with that, just being a 1-cost unit that you can deploy alongside, like deploy it first and then play your capital ship. That way you don't just get like blown out by that like pick something and kill it blue villain removal is really good. And then our last big boy capital ship is 2 copies of the Green Devastator, 10 cost, 10/10, Sentinel Overwhelm. When played, blast something equal to the number of resources you control for damage. This card's just crazy. Getting to play this on 9 or even 8 if Piett survives a long time is nuts. It walls out everything. If you get to give it Ambush, the Ambush Overwhelm is wild. It plows through anything with the Overwhelm, and then just getting to kill basically anything on sight is fantastic. Keep in mind, anyone who's played Green Devastator before is always used to it just blasting for 10 damage minimum. If you play this on 9 with Piett, you do only get 9 damage out of it. So you don't kill their Devastator. You don't kill their Green Devastator. Very, very important thing to be aware of. But this card's amazing. This card is just fantastic. If you like ramp really, really, really hard, it can even be your stabilizer against some of the aggro decks. And again, against those like fair mid-range decks where you're just kind of playing a real good back and forth, you know, trade units, trading resources, poking each other here and there. Then suddenly you slam this down, and if they don't have like an instant removal for it, it's the fun police. It's the fun police for matchups like that, and it just says it's time to tidy this game up. Next, let's get into our events. First off, we're playing 2 Timely Intervention. This is a 1-cost event that you can smuggle for 2, and you just play something from your hand and give it Ambush. So this, in tandem with 2-drop Piett, we have a lot of ways to give these capital ships Ambush, or, you know, God forbid, even like a Crate Dragon Ambush, which is seriously nice, especially when the Overwhelm comes into play. Another thing you can do with, again, Piett, when you flip them on 5, you're making these capital ships cost 4. So you can play a Timely from hand and immediately send in something like a Ruthless Raider or a Resupply Carrier, and that is really, really good. You can't smuggle the Timely quite on that turn because that would be 6 resources, but it still works out really, really, really well. It combos so good. Unfortunately, you can't use it when you're on this side of Piett because, you know, you have to exhaust him to play the capital ship. You can't put the Timely somewhere between that. But when he's on this side, oh man, you're Timely in everything, and it feels really good. This card's nice and flexible too. It's great against aggro because like ambushing a Raider just cleans up everything in space, or even just ambushing like a Resupply Carrier. Ambushing a Red Devastator, everything is dead. It's nice. But then when you're against hard control, being able to like ambushing your Ruthless Raiders into Avengers to both take them out and lock that 4 burn to base in right there because it's suicide running into it, that is super duper good. Especially because if you just drop your Ruthless Raider and then it gives them a chance to No Glory it, you can lose out on a lot of value. No Glory has made Ruthless Raider a little bit worse of a card, but you know what? These Kiros running around with 60 card decks, they'll just never have it. They'll just never have it right when they need it. Next up, we're going to play 1 copy of Shoot Down. I know this seems really weird right here. When you see the whole deck, it will make more sense. This is just kind of the best 45th card, but this is a 2-cost event that busts a space unit for 3 damage, and if you happen to kill it that way, you get to burn their base for 2. This is just a really good, like, secret turn 1 play if your opponent's aggro space deck goes first, or I mean, even if they're like, you know, blue-green villain and they play a Inferno 4, this is like the best thing you can do, where you just kill it, you get a little bit of burn damage to base. Every single piece of burn damage to base is so relevant in those matchups. And man, dude, every single time that you open this and like the aggro deck goes first and plays like their A-wing or whatever, and you get to play this Shoot Down, dude, it just feels unstoppable. You follow it up with like Open Fire next turn, and they're just like, okay, I get it, man. I'm not here to play. Next up, we have 3 copies of Resupply. This is our other ramp card. It just turns itself into a resource for 3. Resupply is amazing. Absolutely staple ramp piece. Again, the best thing you can do in this deck every single time is turn 1, play whatever 2-drop you want. Turn 2, you play your ramp, either Resupply or Technician. And then turn 3, you get to ramp. You get to flip your leader on turn 3 and then play a 6-cost capital ship while your opponent stares at their 4 resources and is like, holy cow, dude, this guy's playing a different card game than me. That's what you want to do every single time in this deck, and the Oscillator just makes that a bit more consistent. Next up is pretty much the other best thing to do on 3 resources. If you miss ramp, you want to just play Open Fire and blast whatever their turn 1 play is for 4, or their turn 2 play. This card's just really good. Open Fire just kind of kills like almost everything. It obviously doesn't kill the 3/5s, which is kind of annoying, but now that like the whole Tech DJ thing isn't a thing, you're not really trying to kill any 3/5s on sight. You can just kind of let them punch you for a while. But you know, this kills all those annoying ships. It's cross arena. This kills Millennium Falcons like there's no tomorrow. Open Fire is just great. And again, if you're not ramping on turn 2, you want to be slowing if you're not speeding up, you want to be slowing the opponent down instead. So if you can kill whatever the scariest thing they played on either the first or second turn was, it's really good. Speaking of killing your opponent's stuff, you know we got to play 3 copies of Overwhelming Barrage. The almighty Overwhelming Barrage. For 5, you give one of your guys 2/2, and then you distribute that unit's power as damage. Obviously, this is insane because we just have these gigantic capital ships, you know. Even these tame ones, you know, Ruthless Raider and Resupply Carrier will blast 6 damage. Devastator blasting 11, Relentless for 8, Green Devastator for 12, you know. The barrages are crazy. This card's just super good. So it's a really good stabilization tool against everything that plays units ever. Sometimes you'll even catch yourself barraging like, you know, like your 2-drop or something like that, just so you can kind of like clear the board up. I mean, heck, you barrage Yularen, you put 4 damage out there, and then you swing for 4 somewhere. You get to spread 8 essentially, almost however you want it. Like, it's just fantastic and insane and amazing no matter what. You know, barrage is barrage, man. There's just nothing more to say about this card. Next up, we're playing Barrage at Home. This is Planetary Bombardment. You pay 6 and you get to blast your opponent for 8 indirect damage, but if you get a capital ship on the board, you deal 12 damage instead. Now, obviously, the insane combo is Red Devastator says you get to put your indirect damage however you want. So you can just, you know, board wipe them with that 12 damage, put the rest to base, or you can just put 12 to their base and maybe just like kill them. Obviously, this card's just like stupid bananas broken if you get to play it while you have a Red Devastator on the board. It's like your backup, you know, stabilized through the board barrage play. But this card also plays a ton of double duty right now because against Kira Data Vault and Hard Control, this is just 8 indirect damage. I mean, if it ever gets to be 12, that's awesome. Like if they have to leave your like Resupply Carrier or your Raider alone for a turn, because realistically, if they don't answer anything bigger, you're just going to want to swing with it first rather than trying to play a Planetary Bombardment. But, I mean, if they leave anything alone, you know, those decks aren't playing a ton of units, especially a Hard Control. This is just going to absolutely annihilate them. Once you get your opponent like real close to death, if they have to like start super lasering you, you can just play this for 8 to base, and that's like insane because, you know, they super laser, there's no units on the board. So the bombardment's just really good, and it's just one of those cards that like it's multifaceted enough. Obviously, it's insane against, you know, the grindy decks, the Hard Controls, but it's also not like negligible against aggro. Sometimes in tandem with the like, if they're an aggro deck that will never clear your red Devastator, you will get to live the dream of bombarding with it and clearing their board. Or you can just like kill them, because if you played this, they took 4, and then you play this, you burn them for 12 and you swing for 9. Like that's literally 25 damage right there. If they're on a 25 hit point base, that's all of their health in just these 2 cards and these 3 actions. So it's kind of crazy. So the bombardment flexes enough to pull its weight in the main deck. It was something that I was playing it in the main deck from the very beginning, and it always felt like it was just like a pet card. I was like, I know that I'm playing this just because I think it's so cool and I like it and I want to live the dream, but it really does start to pull its weight in a lot of scenarios. And then our last card is just Palpatine's Return, man. 6 cost event, play anything from your discard pile, and it costs 6 less. If it's a force unit, it costs 8 less. So you can revive your Mauls for 6, which is really cool. But realistically, what this card does, it just acts as an additional copy of whatever big thing you need. Sometimes it lets you play 2 Crate Dragons against hard control, and that's sweet. Sometimes it's just the 4th Ruthless Raider, the 4th Devastator, you know, the 3rd Green Devastator, the 3rd Relentless. It's just an extra copy of any of those, and that's just really good. Like, there's just no better way to dedicate one single card in your deck to just something that can be literally any of the best cards in your deck at any given point in time. Now, I am going to dive pretty deep into the sideboard here, because realistically, I think these 10 cards in our sideboard, depending on what your local meta is, could easily flex in and out of the deck at any point in time. If you don't have a ton of Kira Data Vaults or hard control, you really don't need like crates and Relentless and stuff in your main board as much, or even really the Planetary Bombardments, although again, those are a bit more flexible. And you might need some of the more aggro tech in the sideboard instead. A lot of times with my sideboards, I like to put my aggro cards in the sideboard rather than my control cards, keep those in the main board, because control is not always going to give you a full 3 games with your sideboard just because of time reasons. But against an aggro deck, you're gonna get the full 3 games. If they nuke you game 1, it's gonna happen really quick, and then you can jump into 2 full post sideboard games, and you will finish those games for sure. Now, with that logic in mind, and also just the fact that my local area is flooded with Kira Data Vaults right now, that influences a lot of these choices. So we're gonna get into the sideboard and kind of see a lot of the anti-aggro tech. And first of that is gonna be 3 copies of Force Choke. This 2-cost event just deals 5 to a non-vehicle, and then it lets the opponent draw a card. Well, it deals 5 to a non-vehicle unit, and the controller draws a card. So you can actually like kill your own laser tech with this and then draw a card if you have to, or something like that. And if you have a Force guy out, it costs 1 less. That's literally just Maul, so that doesn't happen super often, but it certainly can. This card's kind of just in here for Sabine. That's pretty much it. It's in here for basically Sabine and only Sabine. We want to kill her on site every time, and we never really care if we're giving the Sabine player a card. I mean, you don't want to, obviously, but as far as like the least dangerous opponent drawing a card, it's the aggro deck that's trying to end the game ASAP, and not the control deck that's going to like really value that card over time. And so that's what it's mainly in here for. Again, with Tech DJ out the way, we don't really worry about that, but something that you're going to think about when it comes to a lot of the anti-aggro cards in the sideboard is you will bring them in against like some aggro and mid-range decks, just because you need to get cards out of your deck. You know, when you're against like Quinlan and stuff, you don't need Crate Dragons and Green Devastators and things like that. I mean, those can come up sometimes, but you'd rather have these more flexible cards in the deck. So you'll even find the Force Chokes going in against things like that. Our next card in the sideboard is 3 Confiscate. Now, this is going to open up a little mini discussion here, because something that I talked a ton about in the previous boss deck profile was playing red-green villain in this big pilot world and just not having answers to it. You know, not having bounce, not having exhaust, not having hard defeat. And so I thought, okay, how do I conquer that? How do I play a deck that wants to go into the late game for the most part? I'd say this is like an aggro deck in disguise sometimes, but you do want to make it past the 5 resource turn for sure. So just how do you do that? And I was like, what if I just played 3 Confiscate and 3 Traitorous in my main board? And so I was doing that for the first few weeks post Django ban, when everyone was playing pilots and the meta was kind of unsettled, and it was amazing. It was insane. It was broken. I was like, dude, 3 Confiscate, 3 Traitorous in the main board for life. Now, the meta has shifted a lot, and I would say those pilot strategies are not as prevalent, but they're certainly still there. So you do want the Confiscates in your sideboard. I don't have the Traitoresses in my sideboard at the moment. I'm going to be honest, I'm probably going to flex between that a lot, so I'd really say they're still up for debate. But the Traitoress is in a weird spot right now because it's a really sweet anti-aggro card that does not work against Sabine, because Poe can break the Traitoress and take their thing back, and that just really sucks. I just can't bring myself to think that hard about devoting anti-aggro tech space to a card that doesn't work against, you know, the best aggro deck in the game. Also, a lot of people are running their own random confiscates because of pilots and stuff like that. And so if your Traitorous gets confiscated, that's like a huge blowout. Whereas if confiscate is your upgrade hate, it's, you know, you don't have to worry about things like Poe Dameron outing it and things like that. And then it's also a little bit more flexible because not only does it kill those pilots and protect you from the super aggro strategies, it also does things like, well, I mean, it kills the pilot leaders, which is another element of that, but it also does things like defeat the bounties in Bossk. It also does things like defeating the entrenched from the control deck. It also does things like defeating the opponent's Traitorous if they try to Traitorous you, which, I mean, that's a pretty common card in the Cure decks right now. So Confiscate's just a lot more flexible. However, if your local meta really loves just beating you up with pilots, slap Traitorous in the main board and just have a great time against them. Then I have an extra shoot down, just kind of as the 7th anti-aggro card in the sideboard. And for the most part, when you're sideboarding against aggro, you're really trying to get stuff out of your deck. You want these Devastators, these Relentless, and this Crate Dragon at the bare minimum out of your deck. You really want those 5. Probably the Bombardment, the Palpatine's Return as well. The Bombardment can kind of stay because if you can stick Devastator, it's really good. And so that's where a lot of those cards are going to come out, and that's kind of why we have so much anti-aggro stuff in the sideboard, because there's just tons of cards we want to get out of our deck against those. And then really, the only additional control matchup card I have in here is just a 2nd Crate Dragon. I don't think you need a 3rd Relentless. You effectively have 3 in total with the Palp Return. Not to mention, if an Annihilator comes down and rips the rest of the Relentlesses or Devastators or Crates out of your deck, the Palp's Return is better than the 3rd copy because it's protected from the Annihilator rip, and it can go fish that out of the discard pile to still play it again, even after they annihilate you, which is really good. So yeah, 2nd Crate in here, just kind of so you see it more often. I don't expect you need to resolve 3 Crate Dragons in total, but it's really more just about seeing one, because obviously to turn the Palpatine's Return on in the first place, you have to see the first one, so having 2 just helps that. And then the last card in the sideboard is 2 copies of Reinforcement Walker. Reinforcement Walker is just kind of a comfort card for me. 6/9, 8-drop, and when you play it and when you attack with it, you can look at the top card of your deck and you can either draw it or you can discard it to heal 3. Again, healing's a really big high quality commodity in Red Green Villain. There's just not a ton of it available, so the Walker is a bit of a comfort card, but it is a true 8-drop. We can't discount this at all in this deck. Now, things like Resupply Carrier do help us curve into it really well. The reason it's in the sideboard is because it just kind of comes in against some of the random mid-range matchups. I really enjoy playing it against things like Han Green or Mono Han against Quinlan. I like to bring this card in as it can kind of stabilize you. You can also bring it in against hard control, although I don't really know what you side out for it off the top of my head. Maybe it's Maul, just because you kind of don't really care about, chopping ground units. You care about chopping Kira, and that's about it, but you'll usually find some other way to take her out of the game. So the Walker is just kind of this weird sideboard spot where you're this guy's hand ripping me a lot, or this guy's playing really slow and he just doesn't have a color palette that gets us off the board really well, like mono yellow, you like yellow red hero, and this can kind of just come in and be a really good tech against those decks. And that is the whole 55 in total. I do want to talk about a few cards that didn't make it in here, because there were some that kind of struggled with for the longest time. I really liked playing Royal Guard as a ground sentinel option, although I think this evolved over time into just wanting things like Maul to get the stuff off the ground in the first place. Not to mention, again, when you're playing the 3 resource turn, you really want to just either ramp with one of these 2 or just kill whatever they've been playing. Now, what if you don't ramp every single time on turn 2, and you don't skip the 4 resource turn? This deck doesn't really have a fantastic 4 resource turn. There's no 4 drops. You can play a 3-drop and a Salacious Crumb, or you can play 2 2-drops. Not the worst things in the world, but not very good. So for a while, I was playing a couple Assault Frigates, because this is just a 4-drop capital ship you can play. It ups your bombardment consistency, and it's just a 5/5 Overwhelm Raid 1 that you play for 4. That's insane. If you're on your flip side, you can play it for 3 and a 2-drop on that turn instead of a big 6-drop capital ship. I really liked having a couple of this just to kind of be safe. However, things like Piett not being able to give it ambush, it just didn't always do exactly what I wanted to do. Really, the best case scenario that I found with this card was dropping it on 4 against aggro and then barraging it next turn on 5. And that was really good. if you have a more aggressive meta, maybe it could find its way as like a 2-of spot in here somewhere amongst all of like these anti-control cards. We already talked about a ton about Traitorous, but it's not in here right now, but I think it's going to be always on the chopping block for me, especially depending on what like your local meta is. And then probably the most played Piett card that's absent from this list is the Architan's Assault Cruiser. This thing is a 7/8 ambush that anything it kills, it takes as a resource. So this card's incredibly powerful. It curves into stuff like Green Devastator and the Crate Dragon and the Walker really, really well. However, it's hard because it kind of takes the spot of a lot of those cards. Like, I could be citing this instead of Walker or maining this instead of Crate Dragon or Relentless, but it's also what you want to curve into those cards. So it's a really strong card. It's also really good against like a Pilot leader deck or something like that, because you can just like Space Ambush for 7 is absolutely massive. But between Piett and the Timely, you kind of have a lot of flexible ambush anyway. This card is not bad by any means. It's just the more I've played with it, the more I can't figure out what matchup I want it in. And I can't say the same about any other card in these 55 cards. And so, you know, I don't think it's gone for good, but it's not in the deck right now. And I kind of need to find an express matchup that I want it in for it to find its way in. Past that, I know there's a lot of other things you can do. I know a lot of people like doing like price on your head merciless contest stuff. I think those things are just a little bit too cute and a little bit too inconsistent. You do really want to play an impactful 2-drop, you know, whether it's like Yularen to heal or Piett to set up ambushes. You really don't want to skip your 2-drop turn. And in the merciless contest, you don't really like board wipe enough aside from barrages to like make that actually hit consistently good things as removal. I'm just not a big fan of that one. That is the end of the deck profile. This one was a lot more in-depth because like I've been playing this in a ton of showdowns. This is a bit more of like a competitively focused profile, you know, really deep matchup dives, sideboard tech guides and stuff like that, because I have been playing this a ton at showdowns. I played this across three showdowns recently, and I got 5th, 2nd, and 2nd, so pretty good, and not slouches of showdowns either. These were all 16 people minimum, and if you've played Star Wars Unlimited in the Austin, Texas playgroup whatsoever, it's grindy as heck over here. It's sweaty. There are no slouches. There are no free wins. We have a good time here, but every matchup is real. Every matchup is real, and we have some seriously skilled players. So these are these are performances to write home about for this deck list. But yeah, I think there's a ton of different ways you can go with this deck too. Another friend of mine at Locals plays like Invisible Hand for 5 with Piett, and then grabs like Viper Probe Droids and Officers, which I think is extremely cool. shout out to Michael for that really cool tech, and that's stuff that I might try as well. But this is what I've been rocking recently. I really like it. I don't know if it's straight up better than Blue Piett, but I do think if you're really flooded in this like Kira Data Vault world that we're kind of living in right now, or if you have a couple dedicated hard control players, you can navigate a lot of the cards and a lot of the power in this deck to gain insane edge and put tons of pressure on those decks that they're just really not used to dealing with. And I think there's something to be said for that in this format right now. But above all else, dude, this deck's just so much fun. Oh my goodness, man. Some of these capital ships for cheap, bombarding them and barraging them for just massive numbers. Anytime you get to hit base for 9 with the Red Devastator, it's euphoria like I can't even describe. Once all the showdowns just came around the corner out of nowhere, I really got on testing this deck. I also had back surgery last week, so it's just kind of been and went to London for a week. It's been a really crazy time in the world of Levi, but the Star Wars Unlimited train has not slowed down here at all. Even though the content train has been a bit, but I've been working on some really cool decks aside from this one that I can't wait to show you guys more of in the coming days. But this deck profile is super duper crazy long at this point, and I think I'm finally going to let it come to a close. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see some more of those profiles that I was just hinting at in the coming days, subscribe. And, you know, if you like the video, like the video, I guess. If you like the deck, like the video. If you've been playing something like this, or just have some suggestions, I would love to hear them in the comment section below. I feel like I've thought about almost every single card that I possibly could, but the card pool in this game is pretty big right now, and of course the possibilities are unlimited, so there might be something I haven't thought of, and I'd love to hear about it down there and get some feedback from my fellow Piett Red players. Until then though, guys, thanks so much again for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Take it easy.